Elijah. Did you enjoy doing it? Hello. Hiya. That's fine.
I'm just in the Disney.
Don't silly.
I'm so sorry.
Time is wrong on my system. Well, it's going to be a longer one, but then everything's got an hour.
It was so confusing,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Whatever you want me to do to help you get this.
No, it's fine. Like, this is things that I'm writing on the board because if most of the problems get on my memory.
Yeah.
I was going to go to
but they need to be able to get through to there. It would have been good to shut the door.
Yeah, but that's where the thing is in on
I might just try it.
Yeah.
Right. We want to be cozy, don't we?
Yeah.
Want to be
We're
nice.
pretty cozy.
Have a chocolate. You sure that's mine?
Yeah, very well.
Oh, you can have them if you like. Okay, thank you, Minion. Bye. You don't mind chocolate there. Anyone for chocolate?
No, I'm fine, thanks. That one, we'll finish on
Really
that.
set the tension of that. Don't you hate tension don't work?
Yes. Definitely. What's that? I think I'm going to go do some whistling. No, 12:30.
You can leave with it.
Nah, I'm going to drop my stuff upstairs. And then, I'm going to get going. Where are you going now?
I just wanted to show you a bit more.
I just want to get Oh, yeah, that's nice. No, go for it. Wow.
Oh, sorry, that's going to be really cold.
That'll be fine, Lou. When I turn blue, you can come over and sit in it. No, but other than that, I probably used to be an outside, let's play one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we could really do. The last one I told you. That was it. So even if you don't do this,
Sounds good, yeah, make yourself at home. I'm just thinking of getting you, so I just need to do a couple of notes. Just give people a couple of minutes to get in here.
I was going to get coffee, but it wasn't very strong.
No, really, need another cup.
yeah, it's the same.
hour and a half and nothing. 6.5. Well, difficult.
Anybody expecting anyone else to come?
He doesn't know you're ready, though.
He's still like he was outnumbered by women. It's a pretty foregone conclusion, actually.
Men are wrong at the best of times, isn't it?
You run away.
No.
Outnumbered by women.
No.
I was going to say you must be used to it. You work in the children and young people's workforce.
That's right.
Okay, we'll go for it, shall we? Does everybody else make it? Gone 1:45?
1:45, bang on.
Slower than mine. Yeah. We might get joined by other people and that's fine, but part of the reason that I wanted to close the door is because I just want to have a sense that we're having a conversation and you know, reflective practice. You ought to be able to say some things that you may be taking a risk with a bit sometimes, and you know, you want to be able to build up some sort of rapport with each other so that you get somewhere with it. So, we're here today to talk about reflective playwork practice. And in the spirit of this workshop, which, sorry, I should say who I am, shouldn't I? I'm Bridget Hansfield. I'm the Play Development and Training Manager for Hackney Play Association. And last year at conference I did a session called IME, or IME, or whatever you want to call it, which is based on a model from Rob Hughes' work on evolutionary playwork, which we will look at a bit, but basically what this session is about doing reflective playwork practice, just generally doing it. So the starting point from me is going to be asking you to think about this question. So what is reflective playwork practice? What it is and what it isn't might be something that you want to think about, and why is it important? And that's where I'd like us to sort of kick off from. So if you wouldn't mind just turning to a neighbour and having a little chat, get your brains into gear. It is going to be an interactive workshop and you're welcome to ask questions any time and come up with suggestions and ideas. It's a sort of teamworky approach. So yes, if you see, open the window, the sun comes in. If you want to do anything to make yourself welcome. If you don't mind just starting to talk about these questions.
Sure.
I'll try and move up and then
For me, it's criticising what I do for myself, things that work.
So what are we meant to do?
Get on top.
I do something somewhere. more organised than
So how you doing?
what you did there,
Hey, I'm sorry to interrupt you where you are, but you are going to have we're going to be breaking up and having chats all the way through this, and that's one of the things that I want to say to you is the most important point for me is that you have time for conversation, because that is such a significant part of reflective practice. So does anybody want to feedback anything about what you came up with? What is reflective playwork practice?
We said it was standing back and watching what you do, thinking of analysing what you do, and using what the response was after what you did.
Yeah.
And then thinking about, was it what you did right, and in the future what could you do maybe it might be better. And we have a managerial role as well, so for me, big part of it is observing my staff team and looking what they're doing, which is great, and looking at what they're doing which is not so great. And we're both saying it sometimes because we're friends with the staff team, no matter what position, and it's thinking about how you can grow those subjects, and that's just to make the environment that you provide for children better.
Yeah. Anyone want to add anything?
I think there's perhaps part of the evaluation process. You can't evaluate honestly. You can look at it from every aspect, the child's point of view, parents, your own child, point of view.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. And for those reasons, that's why it's important as well, for quality, for performance management, for learning and development and growth, and all those things. Just to sort of, in a way, put a spanner in the works at the beginning, that is what reflective practice is. Whether you work in playwork or probably any other job with people, which is where the kind of term reflective. What's different about playwork reflection? Is it the same as everywhere else? Is there some difference?
There's children in the mix after.
I mean, what would you think the most, the biggest difference between playwork and some of our related professionals, whether it's in schools or early years or youth work? What's the big difference?
Looking at outcomes for the early years more, whereas when you're working in a school project, etc., it's not about the outcomes, it's actually about the child enjoying the environment and getting what they need, whether it be because their parents work or they're there for their own enjoyment.
Yeah. No.
In play, there's the 3 different stations.
Yeah.
If you're in a after school provision, it's more structured.
I mean, I think that's a sort of fundamental point about reflection, that where we start to part ways, and it has an impact on lots of things that we do with other colleagues from other professions if we're not able to explain to them why we have something different that we're looking at. Through the process of this session, I hope we'll cover some of the things that what we're looking at, why we're looking at it, how we're looking at it, and how we might even record or capture some of the things that we look at in reflective practice. But obviously, if you end up taking us somewhere else, because that's the agenda for us as a reflective group, that is fine as well. But basically, I've got a few sort of tasks and discussions that I thought we could have that would just help deepen our understanding. And that's what I wanted to say really, is the purpose of reflective practice in any profession is about deepening the understanding. It might also have other spin-offs like performance management, quality assurance, or helping you as a student and a learner, or all those other things. But the most important thing is it helps deepen your understanding of what it is that you are attempting to be pretty expert in. And I know expert isn't a word that a lot of people like to use, but if you're serious about doing play work and being involved with children at play, I think you should have some sort of aspiration to be as expert as you can be at it. So it's about your deepening understanding. Does that make sense? I'm just going to have to apologise. I managed to just get ready to come away and collapse and feel really ill, and I'm about to, I think, lose my voice. I'm not sure, but so if it goes in the middle of the session, I'm just feeling a bit silly today. So if I miss things, please help me out. Yeah, so, sorry, what I wanted to say particularly about it was that it's the other thing that people do when they start to try and do quality assurance or against qualifications, if you've got assessment criteria things, is they try and measure something. And that is another problem for us, is that when we reflect on things, we're dealing with the unpredictable, something that we couldn't even guess was going to happen, the spontaneous. And so obviously the way that we're going to think about it is, and analyse, I like the word analyse, the way we're going to approach it is going to be different. So I'll come back to that on some levels as well. I'll come back to the levels as well. No, we'll do that now. I should meant to say to you, thinking about today and you being in sessions and things, how are you going to reflect on your learning and your experience at Eastbourne? What's your intent?
Well, we came to our first session and then we just went out in the breakout area and we spoke about, what we've learned. And during the session, we learned from other people different things.
Yeah.
So,
I know how to break a trade in the army.
Really? So, have you made some notes? Have you?
It's all up here.
Yeah. So a lot you're just going to hold, and it's the experience. It's the experience that you're having.
Keeping notes as well. Because you can look back at last year. I actually came across some of the notes I took last year and I thought, oh, that worked out. And I had to do it with assessment, so it was good because I could use some of that information that I learned last year and kind of put it in, which was really good. So, yeah.
So this is one of the things that is difficult. It's about time, it's about recording, it's about teamwork, when so many of us have such little time to talk to our colleagues, etc., when we're actually open and in the midst of it all, and so lots of issues like that about reflection. But in a way, you can play that in your favour, because it is about being creative, it is about recognising that even the conversation over a cup of tea, even the phone conversations or the moments that you take in the middle of a session where you just stand near each other and they're all moments of reflection. The other thing is about reflection being, people talk about it being individual, and in fact I really like John Dewey. I don't know if you know John Dewey used to write about education. He actually invented the library system, which is called the Dewey system of numbering, but he's somebody in adult education that you sort of would refer to quite a lot, and his attitude about reflection, I'll find you a quote from him, is Dewey: reflection is an active, conscious process whereby we recognise that we have certain beliefs and knowledge and we actively examine these. So when people are sometimes talking about oh yeah, we just talk down the pub and things. There is a difference between having a chat and actively examining what's going on, and that does involve a degree of professionalism. I'm not saying that reflection doesn't happen for some people in very non-formal situations, but if you don't then formalise it in some way that it requires you to both be analytical and to record it in some way, then it's kind of lost to the organisation. And the other thing I want to say is it's individual. Yes, you need to think about things, but it's team. It's a big thing to do with team. And it's organisation. So you've got the individual within the team, within the broader organisation. That is all part of reflection. It doesn't happen separate from those things. Yeah? Making sense? There was one other quote I just wanted to say. I think it's Shern who I rely on quite a lot. Shern's definition of reflection is a conversation with a situation. We talk about that, and I can remember that most of the time when I'm not really sick with colds. So conversation with a situation, and a situation encompasses people, space, objects, movement, interaction. You know, a situation captures the whole thing. And what happens so often when people start to reflect on things and think, oh, I've got to do this for my manager, they go into a little incident or a little particular child, or, you know, they focus in too much. You do need to focus in, but you need to sort of have the big picture, pull it apart, put it back together again, so you've got the whole situation when you're reflecting. You don't just reflect on one aspect. Okay? I've got a little exercise just for fun, really, and because I thought it would amuse me to watch you do this. So I think I'll ask you just to do in threes. This is your magic envelope, and if you wouldn't mind doing a 4 here, is that okay?
Yeah.
You might want to sort of find a bit of table to do, you may just against there, or you know. Or you can do it on the floor if you're on thicker than me, if you're on the floor. You're able to make a picture. There's some people here who might have advice to us with picture making, because they know the place. Right, here. Should we move that? And you can't do too much, you two. Alright, we won't. We won't. Very fun. You can help, but... We know where it is, yeah. So we'll just sort of... We'll let you guys do it. You'll watch and we'll see if they're going to do that. You can join in laughing. Yeah. No, you can join. That's how right. Right, come on. We're just creating a picture. You're starting to realise the floor. That was floor with an AW, not a WO. It's the trick. We got that. You're going to have to make the best picture you can. Sorry. You've got enough pieces to make a picture, but the picture isn't going to be perfect. There you are. It's a trick. I told you it would amuse me to set you a trick.
we'll do that on Thursday.
Have you done all of it? Yeah. Okay. That's great. Have you done one, yeah? Brilliant. Do you want to have a look at each other's? Go on, count down, quick. Yeah, I was faithful on these.
Yeah, to put that on the box, it's not perfect.
It's a really complicated way of illustrating it very easily. You could tell me, what point am I trying to illustrate here? Not everyone's picture is the same, and you can't fit it in the same slightly different type, same funny day, slightly different people on it, slightly different angles. In relation to reflection, obviously we're talking about it is multi-perspective. It's very easy. I mean, one of the things that never ceases to amaze me when I try and find out from people about a particular event that happened, what happened, and they all think they're telling me the same thing, but they're actually all telling me something different. And I wondered if we swapped. Yeah. You probably could eventually, but I'm so confused now about what's in these envelopes anyway. But what you'll see is they should all be the same shape.
Yes.
So, but they are definitely, they're the same size, and they're not that far away from where they were taken, but it's incredible the amount of difference. So much you can do. Well done. You're nearly getting that, isn't it?
Yeah.
But you get a really weird picture, and what gave me the inspirations for this was going to a workshop that Stuart Lester ran, where he talked about diffraction, which is D-I-S-S, diffraction, which is what happens when you get, as opposed to looking in a mirror, straight reflection, when we're talking about reflective practice, diffraction is when you hit a crystal or you throw the stone in the water and the ripples go. Diffraction is the ripples or the light that comes from a crystal reflection rather than the straight. So that's what I'm trying to say about reflection. Do you get that? And that's the other thing that I should say is one of the things, I've just been to Wendy Russell's workshop as well, which brought up a lot about this stuff in as well, is language is so unhelpful sometimes in trying to share meaning and express yourself. Language is not always the best way to do it. So thinking about how we share perspectives without always relying on words. I'll give you an example. Sorry, if you wouldn't mind putting the stuff back in the envelope, I might do that again just to wind off people up. Did you enjoy it? Or did it really irritate you? Yes, excuse me. Yeah, no, don't hesitate about talking to people, really. Sometimes you have to be with that moment of being totally confused to remember what it's like to be totally confused. And that is what happens all the time, I hope, in play work, is that if you're not getting confused, you must be missing something, because it should be quite a mystery. It should be difficult. We're not looking for answers. And that's the other thing that this workshop is about questions. Being good at reflective practice is knowing what the questions are to help deepen and further your inquiry. So a bit like if you think that the best thing about really brilliant play is when you're in the midst of play, it just produces more play. The really brilliant thing about reflective practice is when you're in the middle of querying something, you can then think of lots of other things to query, and that will open up your horizons. And again, this is what I would say is a very different model of reflective practice that you'll get when you're dealing with outcomes-based services, where your reflection is, did the young people meet the targets that we had established for them? Did the staff meet, because that's a good one, that thinking about your staff, you reflect on your staff. Did they meet the targets? That is what we're about. We're about having a conversation with the whole situation. How does this member of staff seem to feel when they're surrounded by lots of older children? Are they different then than when they're surrounded by younger children? Are they more comfortable in this? And what's that about? You know, it's all about questions. So we're talking, I don't know if anybody knows, I think it's Latin, a bit meta-communication and metacognition are the two words that I would use to help deepen your understanding of thinking about thinking. Metacognition is thinking about thinking, and if you don't think about thinking, you won't be thinking in the right areas that you need to think about, if you see what I mean. So you need to look at yourself. How do I think? What triggers my thinking? What helps me? Yeah. So reflection is a huge thing. I can make it really complicated, and I will do for a little while, but actually it's really simple as well. So just to reassure you is, and this is again a bit like the journey of reflection, is simple things happen, children play, you watch. That's simple. Then you make it really complicated by unpacking it all and examining it all and analysing bits and pieces of that, and then you bring it back together to something that's quite simple. And that's sort of what reflection is. But each time you do that, hopefully you've been on a journey of deepening your understanding. And that's the bottom line. Have you deepened your understanding? Have you helped somebody else deepen their understanding, if it's a team situation, if it's a supervision situation? So that's what it's about. Make sense? Gosh, we've got that. No, we don't. I wanted to just use one that I found useful. Sorry, the reason I was asking you about how you're going to reflect on this weekend, sorry, it's not weekend, it's 2 days. How you're going to reflect on it, how you're going to share it, how you're going to discuss it, is that I have bits and pieces of information on my computer at home, including an essay that I wrote for my PGCE on reflection. So anybody who wants the academic version, I can send it to you. I'm happy to share stuff. And part of the reason that I deliberately haven't come along with PowerPoints, handouts and all the things that you might use for some sorts of training is that isn't what reflective practice is about. It's about people, it's about relationships, it's about observation, yeah? So that's why I'm not using that. But if you want any of the stuff we talk about today, just drop me a line and I'll put back my email again. But it's on the hackneyplay.org website as well, if anybody wants it. Okay. Hi, Mabel. You can take that, I'm not going to use it. Oh. Right. I've rejected all technology today. You didn't want to know my it's gone. See, I can have that effect on me. we know each other a long time. Okay, so this is, let me get this right, this is somebody called Moon. I can tell you the date that they were writing, but I've forgotten it, so I'll have to look at the notes. But basically, talking about levels of reflection, which I found really useful, because one of my frustrations with reflection for myself, but also with other people, is that I just feel like people don't kind of grapple enough with it. They don't challenge themselves enough with it. They're trying to be too simplistic. And I also would say this equally for a lot of people, like in the training world, is I think they try and give people answers. And it's a tempting thing to do, because actually I know quite a lot after 30 years in play work. You know, I could massage my ego greatly by giving you answers and say I've got all the answers, and I haven't. And I think it's a real mistake for other people to think that they have answers to give you. You know, I think it's really important that you work out things together in your own situations, in your own teams. You know it. You are more of an expert in your own situation than any of us are. What will stop you from being an expert in it is not scrapping enough with your reflection and with your everyday work. So this is Moon's levels of reflection. As I say, I can send you some information on that if you want to take notes. Right? So at one level, it's just about noticing. I noticed that the other day. Noticed children playing. See them all the time, don't we? We share little stories with each other about what play we saw today. Did you see it when so-and-so did that? That was funny, you know, that's it. End story. It's fine. It's a part of reflection. Making sense. Oh yeah, I think he did it for those reasons. His rabbit died last week, or But that's making sense of. It's quite superficial. It's helpful. It tends to solve problems. Next level, making meaning, is, did you think that? Oh well, I saw him do that later on and it was totally different. And you've got some sort of sense that you've jumped to an assumption or a conclusion that may be wrong, but it's certainly only a part of the picture. Pictures, parts, all fit together, right? And then working with it. So if you've got a different perspective from me of a situation that we were both looking at, what are we going to do? We need to start asking some questions about it. So what questions should we be asking in that situation? Is, where are you standing? Or how long do you know him? Or, you think about the questions you might ask about a situation. I'm not going to give you a blueprint of questions, So that's starting to work with meaning, is that questioning. Where it leads you to afterwards is that transforming, it's transformative learning. It's learning that actually makes you more understanding, makes you more competent, makes you more aware. Yeah. Keep the words coming, they're not in my head today. So, it's that real. I feel very strongly about this as an adult educator, which is my other hat as well as being a play worker. To me, there's hardly, I see them totally joined up. But this thing about experiences being transformative is that it's no good if they're done. It's like doing activities and doing the templates of the card. Here's the card, we're going to do a template. Well, it has such little level of meaning and significance to somebody compared to them coming up with something for themselves, with everything they see around them and all the complexity that they bring to it. Transformative learning is what I want play workers that I work with to have, and what I want to experience in my working life. I don't want to be just noticing. Some days I'll just notice, and that's okay. You don't have to beat yourself up about it, but it is that different levels is, I think, really important. You heard of moons? Is that something you come across? Right. So sorry, just before we go on to the next thing, I'd just like to get an idea of where everybody's from. I'm sorry I can't have sort of more in-depth conversation with people, but I'm around for the rest of the couple of days, so if you want to talk about it, you can come back to me. But I think it'd just be good to know maybe your name and what your job role and geographic area is, something like that. Do you mind?
Hi, my name's Ellen Delaney. I work in Meriden Adventure Playground in Chelmsford Woods in Birmingham. It's an outdoor space. We have got no indoor space, so we're completely outside. We've got a play pod, so a lot of our stuff is in the play pod, which is, kids really enjoy. I work with Sharon as well.
Hi, Sharon. I'm Sharon Ellis Dunbar. I work for Meriden Adventure Playground with Ellen. I've been there 8 years, so I only hold a part-time job there because I work for Education Welfare Service as well. So all my naughty kids come down there.
I'm their next door neighbour. I'm Keith. I'm play service manager for Dudley, and that's basically an adventure playground, which is relatively new. Been there 5 years. It's based on what was an old school playing field, which is relatively big, about 2.5 acres. We've got a building, and we've got, I would say, really good outdoor space, which is.
Hold on to it, because the next exercise is going to be about the play setting that you're familiar with, and that will link on. That's great, thank you.
I'm Laura Fitton, and I'm from TikTok Play in Something, West Sussex, and we have after school clubs, breakfast clubs, and holiday clubs as well. And I also work as a teaching assistant in the morning, so I've got like a really sort of broad spectrum. I work with kids with additional needs in the morning, but I'm the day leader, manager of the after school club. That's my main role. So, yeah.
Great.
Angela, when the work at the Wisbech Adventure Playground is open access adventure playground. We've got some indoor space at the size of a riverboat, basically, and another one for the toilets. So mainly our jobs outside. We do have craft area, but we try and focus on the outside. Again, it's quite a new place because we've only been there about 4.5, 5 years at most now. So we're just starting to find our feet a little bit more and turn it into a little bit more adventure rather than playground.
Yeah. The sort of pre-built venue.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
I'm Rachel. I work with Angie as well. I'm relatively new to playwork. My first sort of job role is playwork. So yeah, do the same thing and looking at the children, how they play, reflection. So this is all really helpful to help me understand how to reflect and be a better playworker.
Great.
Hi, I'm Lynn Reed. I work for Chichester College.
I'm Lynn from Brighton. I work in breakfast club, after school club, play scheme and nursery. All within the same site.
On the same side.
Hi, I'm Janice. I work for Hackney Play Association. I do after school provisions, adventure playground, and I manage the inclusion project as well.
Hi, my name's Eniola. I also work for Hackney Play Association. I work closely with Janice on Captain Heart Play project at after school and through holidays and everything. I also kind of do a few times to work on the adventure playground. I also work in schools and sport, coach kids sports and things like that.
Hi, I'm Martin. We run an after school within a school. There's about 30 children. We play in business.
Where is they?
We're in Mr. Langway. Right.
Great. So we've got a nice rounded spread of experience there, haven't we? I think that's important as well. So make the most of the opportunity to talk to each other. Right, great. Get on to Imi. Sorry, we keep having this debate whether it's Imi or Imi. I really don't know and don't mind. But to tell you the truth, when I did my work on it last year at this conference, Bob Hughes, who developed it, did the session with me, and he never put me right, so I'm going to carry on saying what I do. But it doesn't matter. The point is, sorry, do you mind taking one of those and passing it on? The point is has anybody heard of Imi? Yeah? So it is, I is for intuition, M for memory, E for experience, and second E for evidence. This is an example of how do we structure our reflection? What tools can we use? How can we go about making sure that we're doing something a little bit more than just noticing and doing a bit of analysis as well? Now, the first time I did this session, you're right. Sorry, I had the wrong thing out somewhere. You should have two sides. It should be like that and like that. Yeah? So all it is that the first side is the explanation and gives you a few more prompts. The second side is the side that we tend to use just to, every now and again, we do what we're calling an play environment audit. And because we do quality in play as part of our practice, it's just, even if you did it, say, once a term or at the beginning of the holiday or whatever, it's just to sort of keep you thinking about what's going on your side. And what I thought this might work out, and I'm just trying to figure out what's the best way of doing it, and I think it's probably good to do it with, if you are in a team of people you work with, I think that's fine, it doesn't matter. But I think you need to be working basically with one other person. I was going to suggest that we go through each of the headings, and you start to think about somewhere that you've been in recent contact with that is a play work setting, or maybe it's a play space that you visit with children, if you're not working directly with children. Most of you are, but sometimes it can be hard. But just think about a space that play happens in and practice using this breakdown. So what I need to say to you first of all about the intuition On the side that's not boxes, it gives you a few examples of some of the things that you might look at. But basically it's your gut reactions. But it's about you as an organism. And in a way, I think it helps if you think of yourself as an animal. We could play that game. If I was an animal, what would I be? Which is always a good one for self-knowledge. But basically, if you're an animal in the space that you're thinking of, what your response to it might be. So it's not just about senses and smells and gut. The gut reaction is also about whether it's a space that you feel safe in, or whether it's a space that you can comprehend, or does it have lots of things that are confusing about it. So just try and think of it instinctively. So let's just focus on intuition. Think about a space and have a little chat with at least one other person. If it's easy to work in should we do 3, 3, 2, 3? How's that? Yeah?
Would you have to spare a pen?
Yeah, sure. Anybody else? I was going to say you do your reflective practice if you don't have time.
It's terrible, isn't it?
You always make me laugh play with it. Sorry, I should
We've got quite a good place to make
you're an animal on the prowl, getting in there. What is it like?
how a feeling starts.
First of all, if you're thinking of yourself as an animal, as an organism approaching this space, what is it like? Yeah. I mean, does it smell? Is it scary? Is it noisy? It's all that kind of sensory visual. Yeah.
You might feel a little bit proud around because there's lots going on, football pitch or possibly small animals. I might get worried because I couldn't see the ground and also then you might be disorientated because when you start playing games, children that aren't familiar with the school there, so that is a different experience for them actually. Lots of flowers, so a small animal I would be quite and you've got the concrete the playground, like things there's a lot of greenery on everywhere. There is background noise
well, I'm helping Luke out. Oh, yeah, good idea.
So you managed to come up with some things that are a bit animal-y.
body sensation.
Midweek gap.
It's grits with being an animal.
Yeah.
I'll go with the right.
I'm not fashion.
We get the evidence, we get the weather can be quite
Can I just ask you to move on to the next one? Have you managed to come up with some? I've heard various things about light and noise and things. Is there anything anybody wants to say that was particularly insightful being an animal?
Depends on the season.
Seasons. Big deal. So, anything surprised you that come up thinking as an animal, as an organism?
Might be a bit intimidated about the space.
So if you think about things like the vastness of the space that you're walking into, but also think about the approach to it, the context of it, you know, the environment all around the street, whether it's by the street, you know, things feel different when you can see a horizon. Things feel different when you've got towers blocks right next, you know. Just keep thinking about those feelings. It's not just about your environment, it's about the whole context it happens in. The time of day will change the feel of a place, you know, all of that as well. So, but that's very much the organism kind of feeling. So we'll move on. I'm going to rush you through this, to the memory. I just don't know, some people might have done it and some people might not, but I'll just try and give you a taste of it. Memory is about you as a child. So what about this situation can you know, does it make you think about, does it remind you of things from your childhood? Can you remember what you might feel like as a child if you walked into this situation? You know, those sort of things. Just think about your childhood memories and how they relate to your own setting.
Yeah, emotion. And there's also like lots of embankments of sliding down
Did you do that
cherry bushes.
Do you remember playing when you were a child?
Yeah. Not as much though. There weren't really anywhere.
So it's completely different from childhood, I think, to what children experience now. Yes, that's the beauty of our playground, is that I think it's a children's experience.
When you were a child, you've not done this all for nothing, what were you?
Not go run.
You just kind of being nosy.
There are some hiding little things that even might be mischief and do that kind of we've been up childhood memory favourites and the carpet just runs.
And do you think about what you just said and how that relates to what you might do about the environment? How do you make these impressive and safe and exciting places? What about the idea of kind of having sparkly things, or I mean, I always like that thing where people do put doors in the middle of the place, but don't really just put a doorway in there because it makes it a bit more magical, doesn't it? I just like doors. But, yeah, just use it. Yeah.
sycamore. You know,
Yeah.
they're bits from
So how
sycamore.
did your place
I don't know, I don't know what
that?
the word for
No.
the
When if you were a child walking into your place setting, how do you think you'd feel? What is it like? Is it welcoming? Is it safe? Is it scary? Is it interesting? Is it boring?
It depends who's there.
Just watch that you haven't got your playwork hat on and you've got your child hat on. You might want it to be all those things,
That's
but
what
what's
I
the
was
truth?
saying. At the age of 4, I used to just go out over the fields with my buddies, and my mum didn't know where I was, and then I'd come back with something. Which now you don't really forget.
But do you find it, sorry, I'm being naughty looking.
I was always on my bike.
People who are slightly younger than me, shall we say, do you think you played out a lot when you were young?
Yeah, every day.
You go out, you leave mum and dad in the house, you go out and play, but you knew when it was lunchtime, you go back to your then go out again, and you know when your tea was, when your tea was ready.
Well,
But one of the things that interests me is that I have been doing this job for quite a long time, and still young people who come to join us as workers will still say that their childhood had a lot more freedom, even though they've been born merely in this century. You know, so it's quite interesting, that perspective. Is how do children actually experience their childhood? Do their kids actually feel like they have lots of freedom? Maybe there's all this adult perspective, so there's a thing about getting into the child's memory and perspective.
Or is it that people that are attracted to play work have had those experiences?
Yeah. Which is it? Yeah. It's catch-22. Because and that was actually the next thing I was going to do, but I'll say it now because I don't know how much time we'll have, is understanding what brought you into this work. Because you'll say, mostly people say that they do this job but it was an accident. You know, it came about. But when you actually start thinking about it, the choices that you've made and the reasons that you've made them, you'll hopefully see a bit more than just the accident. Yeah. But what comes first? Okay, shall we move on? You've done childhood memory, sorry, I'm just rushing you a bit. It's good to have a couple of notes just to take back. Okay? Right, so play worker as adult and practitioner. This kind of, I'm going to say, this is the one that you probably fall most easily into in a way. And the minute that people who are play workers visit a place, they will see the potential or the drawbacks and constraints in a setting for play. Because we will put that thing on.
All I've written in that, it's really funny.
Well,
The one before the memories of being a child is all like, yeah, I'm happy, and then as soon as it gets to adult, all the difficulties that come from trying to run a setting in like a school setting, you're trying to run a play setting, it's just really funny. It was all of a sudden this change. It's like you want to keep that happy, you know, play sort of instinct, but it's so hard to at times.
Because of constraints about space?
Yeah, with the shared space, firm boundaries of the school. I mean, to be fair, it's quite good because our school lets us climb their trees, which is something that in previous schools we would never have done. It's tough to give them that freedom when you're in a shared space. It's not your own. You can't, you know, leave toys out. You can't put loads of pictures up on the wall. It's quite hard to do. I think you managed quite well. So.
Yeah, there's always room for some sort of improvement.
Yeah.
But also that thing about thinking about what it's like from the children's point of view. They might not be experiencing the frustration that you are as a play worker about it. It's all about perspectives and sort of trying to look at them all, how they sit alongside each other or entangle with each other. Brilliant. Okay, so maybe a couple of notes about your own setting in relation to how you feel about it as a play worker. You might have historical, running alongside any decisions as a play worker, you might have historical or geographical comparisons that you're doing all the time because you've worked in other places or you work in more than one place, or, you know, so you're always making those sort of comparisons as well. And if you haven't got those, I think it's really important you go and get them. If you haven't been to other play settings, you need to go to them. You know, you must know more than one. Sorry, I should say play work setting. If you think about it, the world's a play setting, isn't it?
We did, last couple of years, we've been quite young, we've been studying, we've been to Meriden,
Great.
But like you say, we've been to Luton as well, and two in London Park. We went Hat Hill and Luton, and Glamis and Somerset.
Yeah.
But, I mean, like you say, it's really, really refreshing.
Yeah.
Because you feel that everyone's having trouble with, you know, say teenagers and, you know, everything like that, you know, but then when you speak to somebody else, it's like, wow, you know, so, and then you can pick up their ways of dealing with things and, you know, it is really refreshing to go and then go back and reflect.
Yeah.
And then sort of like, you know, it is good, honestly. I mean, we're trying to find some more sort of this year, you know.
Yeah. I think it's keep on doing it.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been to lots of different things in my job. I've been lucky, so there's part of what I'm allowed to do. But recently I took a group from Sheffield on a tour of business in the Hackney Playground. I had such a good time, but I realised that I hadn't been for about 8 years or something, and they'd all changed. And it was, it was great eye-opener.
I mean, even down to these two here, you know, I mean, it's like, they've got a massive indoor space as well as massive outdoor space, you know, whereas we've only got sort of the barge. But then you go off to Meridian, you know, it's just outdoor, you know, apart from a little cafe sort of thing, you know, it's like we're stuck in between sort of thing, you know, it's sort of like self-built and, you know, everything else too sort of like custom-built and, you know, how we are, so it's brilliant to sort of just exercise your brain a little bit more.
You could skateboard in the dark. That does fit. I'll be fine. Okay. Anything else on sort of just thinking about as your playwork experience? Any insights that came up just spending a few minutes thinking about it?
It's always the challenges as well.
Yeah.
Like one of my biggest, we're similar to yourself.
Yeah.
That we were born through the Play Pathfinder program, so we had investments. I came into it not having really been playwork. I've done playwork with disabled children with my background, so I think I missed a load of things that now, if I knew what I know now, if I'd known back then, I think the adventure playground would be more like an adventure playground, like you guys have got. And we're kind of moving that way. We're doing a lot more. It's like you're doing more self-build now, and the stuff's looking more rustic, and we're not so protective of it anymore, and we don't mind mud splattered about the place and all that sort of stuff, you know. But we have the problem is cuts, and we have to generate income, and our big income generator for us is school use, and the biggest of all the schools is special schools, which is great because we always wanted it to be a place for disabled children as well as non-disabled children. But when we build a new structure, so we had Wolverhampton Play Service coming and build us a fantastic structure with a really risky bridge, you know, and you know, we watched the bridge for a good while just to see how it was used, and actually the kids they knew what they were doing. They weren't doing it. But the schools that came in, one of our big schools, were like really uncomfortable, and for good reason as well. Actually, they had an autistic child who has a real thing about jumping off things, and we watched this kid come onto the bridge, and there was a concrete path below it, and it's higher than this seat. It's as high as this seat. So we put a net over the bridge because I need the money from that school to survive, and because I don't want that kid to jump off and break both his legs. But also that means because we're trying to cater for such a broad age range, because we have everything from babies up to adults coming along, trying to get the balance of there being challenge for a 13-year-old, whereas it not being something really dangerous for that toddler. That a lot of the times the parents are there having a coffee, not even they don't know where the toddler is. And we've got these climbing frames with hatches, you know, so you can climb through the ladder, through the middle of it, where if they drop down there, we're talking really dangerous, you know, it's getting that balance.
It's a tricky one, and I don't mean to be, it sounds really blasé saying this, but I think, but also they don't do it, you know. I mean, you have to build up some level of confidence that children, you know, we go on the underground station, we walk along the canal path, we do loads of things that are inherently dangerous to children if they suddenly did something. that we weren't expecting them to do it, and actually they don't tend to. I'm not saying they never will.
I agree.
And I do think you have to keep working on that balance. But also, what you said is just great for one of the things that I wanted to get across, which is about this in reflective practice. There's this, I don't know if people have heard of Colt's learning cycle, which is basically, you have an experience, you draw some conclusions from it, you reflect and think about it, you then go and apply it, and then you have some more thought. The thing about generalising learning, I can't remember exactly where it fits in. You do it after reflecting, don't you? You generalise, so it's not just in the situation that you're in, but it's in the wider situation, which is great, which is how most people will reflect. But in more recent times, a reflective model that actually includes what they're calling a double loop. This is Shern again, who I like, and K. Agaris. He's written with other people, but anyway, I can send you information about this. This thing about double loop thinking is you don't just look at the experience, what happened, what I learned from it, how I'm going to apply it, how I'm going to generalise it. You also look at how does it relate to my underlying principles, or actually the underlying principles of the work that we do. So what you were talking about, there's a classic one, is what's our reason for being? What are our principles, ethos and approach about, and how does what we're trying to do fit with that? And there is conflict, there is tension, and all these things I would say my approach is never get into binaries, with this thing or with that thing. I'm going to get you to do that in a minute, but you go into spectrums. So where along the spectrum, how far can we compromise about some of those things? If it means that we have lost all risk and adventure from our adventure playground, we got a problem, But there are compromises that you make along the spectrum. The same if you're in a school hall where you're really suffering from sometimes unsympathetic circumstances and people and all the rest of it. How far can you compromise before you actually say, well, actually, we can't run a play club here. This is not a play environment. There is a point where I might get to that, but there's a lot of places on the way. But you're constantly dealing with that. So your reflection should always include your principles, your reason for being, the fundamentals behind your job. And I would say just use the playwork principles. They're not perfect. We can pick them to pieces, we can reflect on them and deconstruct them and reconstruct them, but they're good enough to give you a quick kind of checklist of, well, how does what we do relate to things? Are we working within what we set out to do? Does that make sense? I'm going to lose my voice now. Okay, so the last thing we were going to do, and that's a little bit of theory, that's an example, was to look at the evidence box. And the evidence box is actually what theories do you use to, not just theories, it's what's your justification and rationale for doing things. So what do you use to back up the way that you're running things, that you're playing settings? So one of them will be the playwork principles. What else? What other things do you use to kind of form your evidence base for why you do things the way you do? Any thoughts? Call them out, because we can all put them in. Well, I think that's teamwork and good teamwork practice is a fundamental, isn't it? Playwork. So that would be one of your evidence. You'd have to think about perhaps where do you get your ideas about teamwork from? So suddenly going blank, thinking of all the people who do things on teamwork. Sorry. But there are theories about consensus and about cooperation, about what is good teamwork, constructive feedback to each other. There's lots of theories that relate to teamwork. Sorry?
The storming norm.
Yeah. Who's that one? Begins with a B, doesn't it? Oh, Bruna? No. He just annoyed me when I can't remember these. I'm feeling a bit stupid. Yeah. So, all forming, norming, storming. Yeah. Morning when you're leaving. That's all teamwork stuff. But nearly everything you think about. So where do you get your ideas about what makes a good play environment?
start looking at other places,
Yeah. So community of practice, I call it your community of practice. I believe strongly in your community of practice being a very important part of where you get your ideas. Where else?
I, since sort of reading Tim Gill about risk and stuff like that, and that really opened my eyes. That first book, his name's gone now. It's like the one that he's done, Risk Averse.
No fear.
No fear, that's
yeah.
it. And it just really made me think, oh yeah, this is what we should be doing, like letting the children have these risky experiences and challenging themselves. And I looked at that in a different way, and I still use like thinking like that in my practice, where a lot of my team might be going, oh my god, should we let them do that? I'm like, yeah, it's fine, just let them get on with it and like stand back in the desk, because a lot of my team still are working towards having playwork like qualifications, but haven't yet. So they're still.
And you get your qualifications when you go backwards anyway.
Yeah.
You're not constantly in some sort of loop of learning. That's why reflective practice is so important.
Yeah.
So there's things like that. There's things like, I mean, with the summary risk benefit.
Yeah.
You know, Play England, it's free on the website. Go on there, get it. Where else do you get ideas about what makes a good play environment? Not just sorry. Yeah. I mean, that's where I see it.
Experiences, and then usually as an cumulative then, you're all contributing, and that's making a better environment.
I think the biggest single place that you get information from is from the people around you, either what they say or what they do. However, beyond that, where else would you get? Like Tim Gill, name some other things. I just think it's good to share them. Play type? Do you use play type?
Yeah, every day.
Yeah. Big warnings about play types and knowing how to use them and not just seeing them as a checklist.
Yeah.
And we could do a whole other session on that. Play cycle? Do you think about play cycles, play frames, play cues, play returns? You know, all of that kind of theory. Perry Elsborne, Starbuck, you know, there's standards for people who are studying playwork, but not everybody has studied playwork, and not everybody studied it recently, so they might be qualified, or they've been qualified in the wrong place, because there are some courses that don't cover the things they should cover. But so lots of theory like that, but also theories to do with childhood, child development, attitudes towards children, you know. Well, you know, I think we have real issues in the playwork sector about how we respond to dominant theories of child development, brain development, safeguarding, you know, what is appropriate interventions. And I think we really have to work hard at recognising that our intervention, which is even if you just take it as our presence, the existence of a play club as an intervention, our intervention is as valid, if not more valid, than lots of other things that are going on in a child's life. You think about a child who's struggling and they're actually talking about their future and whether they're going to stay with their family and they've dropped out of school, still turning up at our playground every day. What's that about? That's the place they choose to come. You know, that's got to say something powerful, hasn't it? But I think we have to really work on, so you need to understand other people's agendas in order to be able to...
And do some mapping as well, you know. I mean, we're in a situation where, again, going back to cuts, but...
You're going to depress me in a minute.
But we don't have a national play strategy to fall back on anymore. It's no longer... The current government couldn't give a crap about it. So what we need to try and do is make ourselves bulletproof, and by doing that, for me, in Dudley, I want to try and link myself to as many agendas as we possibly can, because we deal with, you know, we work in safeguarding, we work around childhood obesity, we work around childhood mental health, we are on the inclusion agenda, we work with troubled families, but we don't get any money from these sources. And we're not written into those policies, which actually gives you then something to fall back on when the cabinet decides that play isn't any longer a local authority requirement.
No, well, I think it's a real political. I'm not going to go on about it too much, but I do think that for everything that you say as a solution, it's also a threat. And as long as you are reflecting on the relationship between what you're trying to do in a political and practical, pragmatic way against your principles and values and reasons for being. Because in the end, you know, I do question why we would keep going with something that has lost its identity totally. You know, is it just because I want my job? You know, because in the end, that isn't. So it is about. I agree with you. I believe in a lot of diversify, keeping a few balls up in the air at the same time. But at the same time, that kind of clarity about what you're there for. And also, I think that it's very easy, because I've worked in integrated services in a couple of large local authorities with youth services and with early years services. And if at the time, if there hadn't been someone like me at a senior level sort of arguing and not accepting that that adventure play was dangerous, or, you know, they would have had a totally different policy. They would have been closing places down because they're dangerous, because nobody there's actually going in with an informed position. So I just want people not to compromise too much, because you do need to have your ammunition for you. But it is right what you do.
It's not about changing what you do, I think. It's about getting it written in to certain things that actually you do what you do, because we're already doing that, but in a different way to how other people, maybe a better way to how other people do it.
For other organisations and people that we work with to actually see that we are doing that.
And so that they understand that you're doing that, because I don't think half of the politicians have got clue what happened there.
They see play and they can play all day, don't they?
Cinderella circus.
I just think it's a more difficult one, and I think that people only learn, having been, like I say, in quite a strategic role. My joy is now that I work in a very practical, sometimes hands-on, but certainly just one removed from hands-on experience at Hackney Play. And I think what makes a difference is actually very personal connections between people. So when one of our play workers meets one of their safeguarding people, or the social worker or whatever, and they make relationships between themselves, that connection has been so much more valuable for our credibility, our reputation, our respect. You know what I mean? And so I think it's really important that people think about that. I was given a concern about somebody saying that a member of staff hadn't understood about their professional responsibility and had done something silly. Another playground was talking to me and saying they didn't know how to deal with it. And I was saying, you just got to deal with it, because that's your reputation at stake. You know, they might have thought it was funny to tell that joke, or to, you know, wear that costume or whatever it was. Yes, Prince Harry thought it was funny when he dressed up. You know, it's your reputation at stake. You have to challenge each other. You have to be straight with each other where you're stepping out of line. You know, like when quite often young play workers are coming into the field, they've often come from the communities they're working in. It's really difficult for them to be going out for a drink or socialising, or even their aunts and uncles who might have children using the site you've had a problem with. And boundaries are really difficult things, but everybody has to think about. It's not an easy job, is it? So giving ourselves a little bit of way of analysing things. I think play environment audits are a really important thing to do, whether you do them through play sites. I mean, what we try to do is do a bit of everything, rather than stick with one model. So IMI, as it's called, IMI, is just a model to help you think and share and work as a team and reflect. Use it if you want. I can send it to you on email if you contact me. That's your thing in being proactive. If you're proactive, I will reward you. So we can go back to that. But just very quickly, sorry, I've got to stop having my Zoom. Is it 1:15 we're due to finish? Yeah. I'm gonna do this little exercise because it was a nice one. The thing I'm going to drop is the one which was about self-knowledge, which is something I'd recommend you do within your teams anyway, because it's quite important you share a lot of self-knowledge. Reflecting is as much about who you are and being honest about who you are and how you feel, and when you don't like it, when somebody's done things in a certain way, is a really important thing to do. The exercise I was going to do was ask you to think about labelling yourself as, for example, extrovert, introvert. Who's extrovert here?
I don't know. I don't know.
I can never answer that question.
Okay, on the spectrum, who's more extrovert than introvert?
I think
In the playwork setting, I'm an extrovert.
Yeah.
I'm in my job role, I'm not me.
Yeah.
So therefore I don't care if I make a fool of myself. Sitting here, I wouldn't be as keen to make a fool of myself.
Yeah.
I'd rather sort of sit back a little bit. But,
So if your feelings about whether you're extrovert or introvert is
Yeah.
affected by some sort of
Yeah.
paradigm
Yeah.
in a way,
Basically, yeah.
is where you feel
Yeah.
more powerful, perhaps when you feel more comfortable. In a way, you've illustrated the point. The point for me is if you don't talk about things about how you feel and what you think you're like and what you think someone else is like, you don't develop self-knowledge, but you also don't develop understanding of the impact of situations and relationships on a person's well-being, whether that's a child or an adult. So think about the whole self-knowledge is a huge part of reflection. That's all I'm going to say. Because I'd rather just make sure we do this group exercise, because I think I'm going to learn lots from you if we do it. So will you bear with me? Yeah. Some people maybe feel less comfortable reading under pressure, so just help each other. This is a description of a piece of play. We've been doing a mapping exercise, a research project, and that's one of the things I wanted to say to you as well, is we got involved in an action research project, and it was the best thing that I've ever done, I think, in terms of reflection. The difference between action research and reflection is negligible, because if you think action research is all about inquiry, and you're on a lifelong inquiry, you're doing action research every day if you start to analyse what you're actually doing. Anyway, so this was somebody recording the example of the playground. Shall I read it, or are you right? So, two girls aged about 8 over a period of 20 minutes. The observer heard them cry out, "Oh no, some boys are on the swing." And their first position was represented by a thick blob, this is at the picture underneath, is plotted to the left of the playground hut. One of them grabbed the other's arms and they raced off to where some containers are on site, and then under the zip wire onto the big structures. The girls were constantly in motion, whether running between the structures and around the playground or climbing up the towers and scrambling over nets or up and down the ramps. The observer could not always see exactly where they were all the time, especially when they disappeared behind the structures, and could not hear what they were saying to each other until towards the end of the observation, when they were close enough to be heard. They then went to their rucksacks and got out what was like 2 sticks, later identified as toy wands, and one of the girls collapsed on the ground in the long grass, represented by the large blob to the right of the hut, as though she was dead. The other girl stood over her, trying spells to reawaken her, and then a younger boy came over and said, "I killed one Death Eater." This is just a little story from, like I say, many observations we did as part of this action research. And the action research was actually aimed at different ways of capturing use of space. We were particularly looking at space, but we were also looking at bodies, materials, movements. I mean, what we're up to now is looking at how do we capture the difference between somebody skipping from A to B, or running from A to B, or strolling from A to B. If you're going to actually try and record what people are doing and discuss it, it's significant. The manner in which things are done is significant. But anyway, it's great fun trying to map, and I'd recommend everyone doing it. The reason that I've introduced this now, and I just want you to spend a couple of minutes talking to each other, is to think about what questions could you ask each other to help deepen your understanding of such a situation. This is about the question. If you want to just do it again in your groups, no, just saying, think of movement, please ignore that. Just what questions could you ask yourself about this situation, this observation, that would help deepen your reflection and your understanding?
There must have been a plan. It's quite interesting to know where the adults were in relation to that. We come to you, and also what weather was there.
We don't record them when we sit on these reports.
Like a verbal and
I mean, there's always stuff later the other day, we've built a new table and a platform, and then I'll add that to our workshop door. You know, and since we built that, just like,
Like that they're enjoying.
someone on board that
Yeah.
not 20 minutes to get to the campfire, well, that's fine. You know, not
They went to
you know, in the end, there's a couple of boys come along and give them a hand, you know. You got all the way up there and just chucked it in.
There wasn't a way to yeah.
But there's just like, it's like, you know, got a bit like down to that. You know, they're actually whispering towards the edge.
So we like follow them around, we do very similar to this, and we write down next to it like one, standing by the tree, two, doing I don't really, I can't remember what they really enjoy playing with. Do you know what I mean? So I don't really know
I mean, we could just said, like, you know, Saunders Park or something like that.
Yeah.
Go away and write the breakfast.
When the boys within their own playtime, just sort of out of range here, was
What did you feel that he's going to fit? Just could do.
Your understanding of what is going on is the observation showing that
What questions could you ask
of the adult,
which is what
how long the girls have known, whether they were really good friends,
But I know that my children, when they're outside, and they most of the time quite happy playing in their little playground games, but because I have to know that, so once you know, you've got to know what they're doing behind the trees. So I was all of my friends and girls do like that. But if they see me doing that, they all go fast. Get with some serious even though they're watching here,
Okay, we've got a few questions here. Sorry, I'm writing this as much for me as for anyone else, and I will make these statements up a lot because I pitch everybody's ideas whenever I do training. So the reward of being a trainer. Some of the questions people are coming up with: where are the adults? Where did the stuff come from? What was the weather like? What play cues did you see? How long have they known each other? What was their relationship? How did it start? How did they get involved? Anything else?
What triggered it off?
Yeah? Yeah? What's the spark sort of thing? Yeah? Yeah? I think that's a question. My point is, these questions you could ask of any situation at any time. So what's the spark? What's the trigger? And it doesn't always have to be about something negative, which is what we tend to spend our time focusing on. But the point as well.